right, thank you. Good evening. I now call the September 13th, 2021 joint meeting of the Auburn Board of Selectmen and the Library Board of Trustees to order. And I'll now ask the Chair of the Library Board of Trustees to call your meeting to order.
Okay, great, thank you. As a preliminary matter, this is Mary Decosta. I'm the Chair of the Board of Trustees. Permit me to confirm that all meetings and persons anticipated on our agenda are present and can hear me. Matt Toth.
Present.
Suzette Dowd. Present. Jennifer Shea.
Present.
Very good, we're all present. Thank
Great,
you.
thank you. Tonight's joint meeting on our agenda has only one item. It's an interview for a candidate for the vacancy of Library Trustees and a vote to appoint a candidate to the Board of Library of Trustees to fill the vacancy until May 17th, 2022 at our annual town election. As we were informed before, the candidate that we were supposed to interview tonight has decided to withdraw their nomination. So the only candidate that we have is our candidate from our last meeting from August 9th. And
Yeah, Erica, you say Brausacker? Briesacker.
thank you.
Thank you. So we nominate to elect Erica to the board.
Okay, there has been,
Second from Matt.
it's been a nomination and a second by a roll call vote. Mr. Toth?
Yes.
Mrs. Shea?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowd? Chair DeCoursey?
Yes.
Mrs. Ruffley?
Yes.
Mr. Berthium?
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Wren?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Unanimous.
Congratulations.
Welcome.
Welcome to the
And
board.
thank you.
So with that settled, now, given that that was our only agenda item for the joint meeting, we can now take a vote to adjourn from the joint meeting and then take a 5-minute recess to settle out. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, by roll call vote. Mr. Toth?
Yes.
Ms. Shea? Ms. Dowd? Chair DeCoursey?
Yes.
Ms. Ruffley?
Yes.
Mr. Berthium?
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter? Mr. Wren?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right, welcome back again. For public comments, we don't have any. There are no public hearings or presentations. Communications, there are none. Under Board of Selectmen general items, we do have a request by the Library Board of Trustees for a special act to change the Auburn Charter to restore the role of the Auburn Public Library Board of Trustees. And with that, I'll invite a representative or two from the Library Board of Trustees to come up and talk about what this item is for. Sure.
ask for your indulgence while I try to read this. The material that I'm reading was developed through a subcommittee of the Board of Trustees. The entire board has approved this statement about our concerns that we have. Some historical background that we have from a letter from town council. I have all this material that will be available afterwards. From a letter in 2012. The involvement of a board in the management and operation of the Auburn Public Library can be traced back to at least 1873. The town report for that year identifies library committee members for the first time. In March of 1874, library committee members were first elected. In 1876, the town report indicates the same library committee was changed to library trustees. And in 1894, the town meeting voted that library trustees be elected to said position. Ellen Garrity was the town clerk in 2012, provided some additional information that the term library committee and library trustees were used interchangeably until 1894, and thereafter the term library trustees was used consistently. Thus, it appears that library trustees have been involved in the operation of the Auburn Public Library since at least 1876, and have served in an elected capacity since 1894. In contrast to the historical role of the library trustees, Town Council's interpretation of the Town of Auburn Charter, last amended 2009, and the Town of Auburn Reorganization Plan, effective May 19th, 2011, resulted in significant changes in responsibility and authority, leaving the elected Board of Trustees with almost no oversight and very limited general decision-making authority. The major role remaining for the elected board was to make policy for the library in areas of limited scope. Participation in the hiring, goal setting, evaluation of the director is not possible with the charter and the reorganization plan, and the inconsistencies in the reorganization plan, according to town council, gives all meaningful roles to the town manager, who he opines cannot legally share any of those responsibilities. During many conversations over a 6-year period between the town manager and the past chair of the Board of Trustees, governance issues were discussed with little positive resolution. On January 6th of 2021, the entire Board of Trustees approved and sent a letter to the town manager about our concerns, questions, and the help we needed. We received a response on March 10th, 2021, restating the opinion of town council regarding our questions and the limitations that resulted from the charter and the interpretation of the reorganization plan. No changes could be legally made. The problems with this governance structure have been amplified during the past 6 years. It has become increasingly more difficult to represent the community in a way that allows us to participate in setting the direction for the library. Even when we completed a 5-year strategic plan for the library, we were thanked, but we could not call for any accountability regarding the outcome. Without being able to set measurable goals and evaluate them, there is little meaning to our work. The only way to restore the role of the Auburn Public Library trustees is through a charter amendment. The Board of Trustees, in responding to a letter from Town Council regarding our request for the process of amending the charter, reviewed the 3 options from him and proceeded to work on the third method listed in that letter. That letter from July 2021 is available. All of that material is available. We'd be happy to make that available to all of you. The third method provided for amending the charter by a special act of the state legislation seemed to us to be the most efficient way to restore the role of the Auburn Public Library Board of Trustees. We drafted a proposed special act or amendment for achieving the goal of having the Library Board of Trustees restore its responsibility based on the Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 78, the statutory authority for libraries in Massachusetts, and to assure our role in the hiring, setting goals and evaluation of the director, and reestablishing our role in approving the budget and setting the objectives for spending. A text from the town manager on September 2, 2021, in response to a letter from the chair of the Board of Trustees to have town council review a proposed draft of a warrant article, clarified the need we have to discuss with the Board of Selectmen the Board of Selectmen has the responsibility to formally proceed with the Library Board of Trustees' request to begin the process for a charter amendment to restore the role of the Auburn Public Library Board of Trustees. We understand that the Board of Selectmen has the authority to decide if you'd be willing to consider a charter amendment, and if so, which of the three methods for the charter amendment to use. We have drafted proposed materials to amend the charter and welcome feedback and discussion with the board as they determine the best path forward. We feel strongly that a special act approach of these three options is the most efficient and effective and will enable collaborative and positive discussions. We want to thank you for the opportunity to share our concerns and listening to our request, and we hope to begin the conversation with you this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to let members know that there is a copy from Attorney Hennigan of that letter detailing the 3 ways to amend the charter in your packets. So you can look at that now if you choose. Do board members have any questions right now at this time? Seeing none, I'm going to turn. Oh, Mr. Ryan.
So, is it really just the hiring, firing of the executive director that we're talking about here, and then some goals and objectives you spoke of?
It is in the hiring, it's in the evaluation, it's in the setting goals. Right now, we cannot make almost any suggestion that we can expect to have taken seriously. We can talk about the kinds of books we want in the library, which of course comes under normal laws that libraries are open and should accept whatever. We could do the strategic plan. We did do that strategic plan. We worked on it an entire year, the entire board. But we have no authority to follow up on whether any of that is being done or not. We can't ask that question. That gets shifted into what's called operational issues. So, and it's really very disheartening to never be able to almost say anything without it being an operational issue. And so there's really very little point in having a board of trustees for the library. All decisions right now, and rightly, in terms of what town council said, reside with the town manager.
Public
Now,
services?
we did, until 2015, we did participate in the hiring, and we did participate in setting goals, and we actually did evaluation, which was kind of very fuzzy, because we couldn't do that as a board. We could only do that as individuals with the town manager. So we really, but starting in 2015, everything stopped. We were not involved in the hiring. We weren't involved in setting goals and doing the evaluation. So in a way, having the board of trustees doesn't seem to make any sense. You wonder, what is the role? Because the few things that we can do could be done in the same way everything else is done. I'm sorry, I didn't.
No. Yeah, I just want to can I add?
Sure.
So, just want to share this last line of the yearly report that I submitted regarding our relationship with the library director. I said, it's our general hope to develop a professional, collaborative rapport that will benefit and please our library patrons and all of our constituents in the town of Auburn, Massachusetts. We're concerned that there are 3 bodies in town. We have the select board. Clearly, you have the opportunity to bring issues about the town or constituents of the town, to bring them forth, to talk about them openly. You have the opportunity to give evaluation to the town manager, and you have the opportunity just to speak amongst yourselves. That's true of the school committee. They did not lose any of their privileges or their authority in the charter change. The only body of the three was the Board of Trustees. So to illuminate what Mr. Toth just said, that I just asking a simple question, we just had a pre-meeting over at the library, what are the library hours? That's met with, well, that's not for you to ask. I'll talk to the town manager and then we'll get back to you. Everything. What about professional development? Oh, no, you can't talk about that. And it's not even that polite when we're met with that kind of, what feels like stonewalling. So what we're asking you, we support you 100% as a Board of Selectmen. I've voted for everyone on this board. We're asking for your support. All we want is to be heard. We want the opportunity to get our voices back. And I think that the subcommittee's committed a lot of hours to prepare any documents that you would like to review about this matter. But we just feel very passionately, we want our authority back. And we think the authority would then create a much more professional, transparent body. And that we would be able to bring concerns of the community forward without any oppositional or conflict.
Just one follow-up question, and I may have just not followed properly, so I do apologize. We had the charter, 2009? That was the change. You said 2015 there was like a fundamental change?
What happened in 2015, up to 2015, we had continued, even though there was a letter from town council, we had continued to participate. Mm-hmm. And I believe that it was the town manager's authority to share with us if she wanted to. Mm-hmm. And what happened in 2015, that what had been happening from the time I was on the board, we were involved in the hiring, even up to 2015. But at that time, that just stopped. It was not going to happen anymore. We could not do any of that. So I'm not sure what was happening in those 3 years, but we did have some involvement. I've talked to at least one person that was involved in the charter, and there is conversation. And I guess if you approve of developing a subcommittee or doing something to review this, we can begin to, these people, this person said, and I'd be much more able to be clear on that later, that this was a mistake. No one thought about this. The truth is, everybody was very concerned about a lot of other issues, including the DPW and some of the other issues. And this particular group was elected, it remained elected, and no one thought that there was going to be any change. And I initially thought the reorganization created the change, but town council says that's not true, although there's language in that reorganization, if you read it, it'd be hard not to interpret that we aren't directly involved. But town council says that that is not correct, that it is inconsistent with the charter and therefore is moot. It doesn't count.
At the statute only controls in the absence of a charter, is my understanding.
I'm sorry?
The statute you're referencing to only controls in the absence of a town charter.
That's right.
Mr. Berthium, I see your comment, but at this time, I'm going to ask the town manager to clarify because there were some statements made about it going back to 2015 and what was allowed and what wasn't. So I'm just going to ask you to.
Certainly. So, as Mr. Toth said, when I first became town manager in 2011, it was made very clear to me by both town council and labor council that the hiring authority under the charter is the town manager, period. Because I wanted to have a good relationship with the Board of Trustees and wanted them to have a good relationship with future library directors, I allowed them to participate in the interview process and took their input. I always was the hiring authority. That does not change. I have no authority to change that. What changed in 2015 was the current library director at that time was hired in a temporary position because we had lost 4 library directors. It might have even been 5. I don't remember how many.
One resigned, and 2, there were 2. We had Cindy, and then Diane, and then Carol Ann.
So there were 3 library directors prior to this one. And at that time, we were hiring a temporary director, which again, the town manager was always the hiring and firing authority and remains that way. So I did hire the temporary director, and actually the board members were well aware of that, and they actually had at the time encouraged that. When that temporary director wanted to become the permanent director, it was my responsibility to develop the agreement with her and hire her. And she was already on board. So there was no interview process in 2015 because we hired the person we had hired in the temporary position. So it was a little different than the others. But I do want to also clarify the reorg plan. So both town council and labor council made it very clear that the reorganization plan does not establish authorities. The town charter establishes authorities. There were some inconsistencies in the reorganization plan developed in May of 2011 that, as Mr. Toth said, had language in it that wasn't consistent with the charter. So, as you know, I raised that, town council raised it to me, labor council raised it to me. I notified the board of trustees that that was inconsistent language. It was in a letter from town council, it was in another letter from me, and that it was going to be addressed. As you all may recall, in May, you did vote to amend the reorganization plan to make sure that the language was specific to the charter. So there is no inconsistencies in the reorg plan. Even if there were, the reorg plan isn't the controlling document. As Mr. Wren said, your charter is your controlling document. So the reorganization plan just sets up a structure for town government based on the charter, not the other way around. Does that?
I think so. Mr. Berthium.
I think actually, town manager covered what I was gonna ask, so.
I have a question. Do any other boards have control over like town staff or employees?
Chair, no, they do not. Prior to the charter, they did. And my understanding, of course, I wasn't here for the charter discussions, I hadn't been hired yet, but my understanding is, and I can clearly see from the language in the charter, that those authorities were taken away to be centralized. And when I was hired as the first town manager to implement the town charter, which involved the centralization of government. The Board of Selectmen at the time had to vote for the reorganization plan as long as it was consistent with the charter, which then set up various town departments. So at one point, a decade or longer than a decade ago, prior to 2009, some boards did oversee some operations. I don't believe they actually hired, although the Library Board of Trustees may have hired.
Library Board of Trustees.
I do believe a couple of other boards and commissions did also. The charter changed that, and the whole intent of the charter, if you all recall, was to centralize government under a professional form of management, rather than having elected boards and commissions, or even appointed boards and commissions, oversee employees. And with all due respect, the Library Board of Trustees are dedicated, they love the town, they love the library, so are our other boards and commissions, but they're not qualified to manage personnel. They are not qualified for collective bargaining. They don't have, in the case of the library, there is no separate HR function. There's no separate financial management function. There's no separate CIP for improvements. There's no separate facility management. All of those functions are under the town administration / town manager. So to bifurcate the library and pull them out, they don't have any of those functions. The school department has those functions through the school superintendent. The town has those functions through the town manager. The library on its own does not have those functions. Those functions belong to the town. So to pull the library out, none of those functions are there to support the library. There's no separate budget. There's no separate, the CIP is part of our CIP. The other piece of the charter was that there were competing entities prior to the charter change. And they would compete for finances, they would compete for resources, they would compete for equipment. So there was no shared equipment. So the whole intent of the charter, and therefore the reorganization plan, was to have more effective and efficient use of resources, sharing of resources, efficiencies amongst the sharing. So right now, the library is a division within the Public Services Department. There are a total of 4 divisions in that department. There's the cable television, there's the library, there's the senior center, and there's the veterans. And those are all, as it is, it's public services. So pulling the library out of one department leaves 3 other divisions. All division heads report to a department head. Under the current reorganization plan, the town manager is the department head for that department. but it was set up so at some point we could always hire someone, but we never did because we felt that it was important for the town manager to have the direct interaction with those division heads. So the library director is a division head, not technically a department head. The town manager is the department head. This would be pulling that department, the division, out of the overall department. But the resources aren't there to support that unless it's still affiliated with town administration.
Sure, if you want to come up.
Julie, thank you for the background. I just want to clarify the letter in the piece here. It's not pulling it out from the division. It's a collaborative nature we're looking for. And if you look at the charter, the school committee, the police, elected bodies, officials have that component to have a collaborative partnership. And our goal is to restore that elected official role as we are as Library Board of Trustees, along with the Board of Selectmen, the school committees and others, to collaboratively partner so that we can have those discussions and have productive, active and engaged conversations to move the town forward through the library, not to say we are the only body managing one thing. That's not what the drafts of things we've worked on in the subcommittee have discussed, nor is it what we're asking for here. We're asking for your support to move forward to ensure that we can have that collaborative partnership, because as Matt mentioned, otherwise we're electing bodies of members of this community who want to participate to do nothing without having that collaborative discussion. And we're trying to build that collaborative, engaged relationship, and we're looking for your support to move forward in a direction that allows the charter to reflect what it had been up until 2009, what the reorganization plan did, which suggests that those creating the reorganization plan were not aware of the changes in that charter and how it took some of those components away and led to the inconsistencies. Even though it has been updated, and that's great, we're clarifying it for the rest. We'd like to move forward with our charter change amendment so that we can collaboratively engage and be a supportive elected board for the town. Thank you.
With all due respect, there should be collaborative relationships, but having the director of a library report to a separate board and commission, separate from town administration, is not a collaborative effort. It is changing the charter to move that position under a different reporting authority. It creates a different appointing authority. It's a major change in your charter. I think, again, I would just respond to the comment about the reorganization plan. The reorganization plan knew exactly what the charter accomplished. It was done with town council and labor council, who all along have been very clear that the operations administration, personnel, financial, and facility management fall under a town manager, where in this particular case, as with our other boards and commissions, unless they're regulatory, they're advisory. And the regulatory would be planning board and conservation and zoning board of appeals. Others are, for the most part, and more advisory and policy setting. So there are clear roles under the charter the way it is now. It's not the form of government that the Board of Trustees is in favor of, but that is how it is established right now. So I agree we have to have a collaborative relationship, but changing the charter isn't the way to accomplish a collaborative relationship. I also tell you, if there's a concern with a particular employee, you don't change your charter because you have a concern with an employee. The charter is there long after we are all going to be here. The charter is going to be there long after I'm the town manager, long after the library director leaves. That is your governing document. That is your constitution. And if you're considering changing it for an issue because there needs to be more collaboration, then you address the issue, you don't change the charter.
Mr. Carpenter.
Just a point of clarification, what is the ask tonight of the board?
Sorry, we can't hear you from
Yeah.
here.
What is the ask from the library trustees to the Board of Selectmen tonight? What is it that you're asking of us?
We're asking
It's
really
not clear.
to establish a subcommittee to take a look at the possibility of making a charter amendment, a special act in the charter. Now, we did not ask to do this by ourselves without the town manager. We have asked, could we do this with the town manager? But we are being told consistently by town council that she has no legal authority to share that. So I understand that. It took a long time for me to fully comprehend the fact that there is no way that she can share any of that responsibility. So we're asking in this that we, along with her, can do this work, that we can, it's a simple thing is, we cannot even ask that the library hire librarians. We are not allowed to do that because we are involved in operational issues. That's what we were told specifically. So we're looking for is some opportunity to have that conversation that gives the town manager the legal right to be able to have those conversations with us and that we can work together. I'm not faulting the town manager on this. She's following the rules as they're established. And I'm saying that those rules really are not very helpful to a board of trustees for the library. More than half the libraries in the state have boards of trustees that have total authority over everything that happens in the library. We're not looking for that as an exclusive statement. We want to be able to do that in a legal way with the town manager. So we're asking that the Board of Selectmen are willing to have a subcommittee to be able to look at this issue and then make a decision about whether or not you want to move forward on that. It's not that tonight you decide to move forward. Tonight, we're asking you to consider taking a look at an amendment and give us that opportunity, give us the hearing to be able to do that so that we can meet, some of us can meet with some of you.
I'm going to turn things back to the town manager. Looked like you wanted to say something at some point.
Through the chair, I just get nervous that the Board of Trustees can't talk about qualifications of current employees. And that has been something that has been stated over and over and over from Town Council and Labor Council. And there are reasons beyond the operational aspect of it. There are also civil rights issues that we also have to be careful of. And don't forget, there is a union at the library. And there's collective bargaining issues here. So it's not as simple as just being able to have conversations about the qualifications of employees. That's what you've hired a town manager to do. And that's what I check with all of our HR, Labor Council, Town Council to make sure I'm doing it properly. So there's a reason that some things can't be discussed. And I understand it's frustrating for the Board of Trustees, but, and I appreciate it because my job is to uphold the charter. And I will tell you that I believe the charter is written the way it is written now to provide professional management to town boards and commissions, so you make sure that we're not making any mistakes when it comes to personnel matters.
Mr. Berthium.
Through the chair, maybe the town manager could explain to us a little bit about what we look for from the Library Board of Trustees. Because I kind of feel like what I'm hearing from them is they want, more focus on, hiring and making decisions and things like that. What I'm not hearing is, what they're actually, what are they getting together for? And so, but I'd like to hear it from the town manager. And if we need to table this, we can table this, but, what I'm hearing from them is that they have no purpose. And I don't really believe that they have no purpose. So I want to know, like, what do we have the Board of Trustees for? Like, as a selectman, I don't have the authority to hire, okay? What I feel my purpose is a lot is if I hear anything from constituents from the town, I address that through town manager, through department heads, if I'm told to trickle it down. So, we don't have a lot of the authorities that selectmen had prior to the charter. But the trustees of the library only have to focus on the library, where we have a much more of a broad focus. And I kind of feel like, the selectmen were kind of like pulled in, and it was for that central management of the town. So I think it served a good purpose, and it serves a good purpose. So, I guess the question is what are we looking for from the Board of Trustees? How can we make them feel like they're being useful, with the town?
So I'll, because the question was directed at me,
Yes, yeah.
I'll say whatever I can, but I can't speak for them. I can speak for what their role is under the charter. So their role is, and this board did take a vote on it, to put that in the reorganization plan to clarify it.
Sorry, excuse me, I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry, let me,
Yeah,
is that better?
yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so I'm sorry, I'm going to have to not look, it's hard, I want to keep looking at you, I apologize. So the role of the Board of Trustees is to represent the community by, gathering information, finding out what their needs are, which they did through the strategic plan. They did a very good job, and they did a lot of outreach and found out what the community was looking for. The difference is they come up with a strategic plan, like a planning board would come up with a plan, or, the town comes up with a plan, and then the public endorses that plan, and then town administration implements that plan with resources, budget, and staffing as we can, taking into consideration all the other town departments as well. The board, so being the eyes and ears of the community to see, do they come back and say the community asked for more programming for middle schoolers, or the community wanted to have programming outdoors, which, we're addressing hopefully through this new library bridge project. The other role is to set non-operational policies, and I actually have provided a list to the board of some 40 or 50 different policies that other libraries have considered putting into place for their consideration. And those, again, are not operational. It is hard, and I agree. There are times that it's hard to draw the line between an operational policy and a non-operational policy. We find that here with the board as well. But you are a licensing authority. They're not a licensing authority. So on the licensing authorities, you do have to have certain policies that are operational for the licensing. So they are to develop broader policies. They're to advocate on behalf of the library. So, if there was a problem at town meeting where we weren't getting the votes for the budget, to advocate to town meeting to support the library. Thankfully, our town meeting has supported the library. We haven't had an issue for decades, years. The last decade, there's been no issues. Whatever we've put in for town meeting has supported. But it's also to advocate for funding, lobby the state legislatures, lobby the MBLC for increased or sustained state aid. So their job is more on a higher level policy, not on an operational. Does that answer your question?
So,
I was going back to something else, so maybe you have a question in regards.
Mr. Worthing, did you have a follow-up question?
no, I had a statement, but I'd like to hear Mr. Toth if
Okay,
you don't.
sure.
I think the town manager is perfectly aware of the fact that we knew that we were not setting general standards for people, employees at the library. What we were asking for was the standards set by the state of Massachusetts, the MBLC, the Massachusetts Board of Library Trustees, and the need for having people who are certified as librarians. That's the only thing. We're not talking about looking at job descriptions for everyone else. We're talking about the general standards for libraries and the kinds of degrees that people are supposed to have to work in any library. Of course, sometimes those can get waived, but that's the only time. We're not talking about what the library associates are doing or what anybody else. We're talking about being able to hire people that have the credentials that the state certifies libraries ought to have.
And right now, that hiring authority is the town manager. So I hope that, I've always asked the board to support my decisions in hiring. There is a lot that goes into hiring. There's a lot of training and laws that we have to follow for hiring. And we also have to follow the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement. So we do live within the confines of personnel management for municipal managers. And again, with all due respect, any of our boards and commissions, while they all want to perhaps play more of a role in operations, the reason the charter changes because elected and appointed officials aren't necessarily always going to be qualified in municipal management. You've also yourself a lot of things that I work on, you don't know, you don't want to know, you hire me to do it, and then you hold me responsible for it. So those are the kinds of decisions that I make. So the library board of trustees, Mr. Toth is right, they do want to be involved in the specifics of who we hire, and that cannot happen under the current structure. Now, to say we want to do this collaboratively, and that's all they're looking for is collaboratively, it has to be more than just doing this collaboratively. You have to change the charter, because the charter doesn't allow that to happen without an amendment, without a series of amendments. And I haven't seen, I did see what was sent to me a couple of weeks ago to send to town council, and I let all of you know as well that I don't have the right now to send it to town council, because according to the process, it has to go through the board of selectmen to see if you even want to do this. So I can't use town council resources until the board has authorized me to go ahead and do that. So that wasn't sent to town council, but what I did read, and maybe I'm wrong, I know nothing was submitted to this board for a special act amendment, but what I did read was to change certain sections of section 3.06 of the charter, which removed the library from under sections that the town manager was responsible for the facility, for the use, rental, oversight, maintenance, and repair of the facilities, as well as to remove it from the personnel and operations sections.
I saw Mrs. Ripley.
So, just as to make sure I'm clear, creating a subcommittee for this task on the charter change allows it to be changed for anything, correct?
Through the chair, yeah, once the Board of Selectmen puts a committee together, of course, anyone can, it's a public meeting, anyone can come in and make a recommendation. And also if and when a committee were to come back to the board with a recommendation for a town meeting warrant, a town meeting warrant can be changed on the floor of town meeting at that time. So anything could be changed. Yeah, you can't prevent a town meeting member from making a change.
Berthema, did you have something? I saw you raise your hand.
Just my follow-up and reason for my questioning is that, based on the letter that we got from town council, even when we were talking about, changing board to, instead of board of selectmen to select board, to open up the charter for basically a free-for-all worries me. So that's why I was trying to get justification on what exactly the issues are. What I'm kind of hearing is that, the board of trustees, the library board of trustees, kind of feels insignificant with what they're doing. However, it's not enough for me to change the charter or to open the charter. I think I'm not convinced that we really should change what's going on. Like you say, with other committees, they don't have that hiring authority anymore. And I know that you folks are saying that you don't really want the hiring authority, but you want the collaboration. But the collaboration is more a back and forth of, you and the town manager making the decision that the town manager is ultimately going to make. And for that reason, I think that goes against what the charter was written for. And I don't, I don't want to open up the charter for the select board thing. And I really don't want to open up the charter for this matter either. Maybe somewhere down the line there's going to be enough things on the table that, some board is going to want to open up the charter and take, many looks at many things. But, it worries me based on town council's advice to us.
Mr. Carpenter, I saw you raise a hand.
I guess a moment of clarity. So from watching your meeting and your subcommittee meeting, what I understood the trustees want to be treated as is similar to the Board of Selectmen. We get to hire a town manager. We also hire a bunch of other people based on her recommendation, which is basically nothing. Her recommendation is what we're going by. That's how it works. So you're looking to hire a director, and then the director would act similar to the manager in this case, and would then filter down those positions that need to be hired? Is that what you're...
Can I just offer some specificity? Because we're speaking in very general, general remarks. So I just want to be very specific. Our board represents pre-K through university inclusive education. So I just jotted down a few of the issues that we just want to talk about. We're not looking to hire and fire at those meetings. That's taken out of context. Specifically, these are things that have come from me as the chair. Do we have any sort of survey or feedback that to find out whether we are, truly representing people who are diverse in our community? How do we know whether our patrons are really enjoying, programs that are going on? So another one is the goals of the strategic plan. When are we going to start working on those? A specific one that's very important to me is diversity, equity, and inclusion, because of my whole background. I'm an activist. That's what we do. We try to make sure everybody belongs, everybody's welcome. Social media, I've asked questions because I'm also on the culture committee. I'm the vice chair. I'm very interested. We utilize Facebook and Instagram. So I've simply asked at a meeting, can you use that? And the response that I get isn't a response, it's a stonewall. I've asked, we're educators.
I understand that.
Yep.
And I don't mean to cut you off, but
Right.
I really need to understand what you're asking. Are you asking to hire the director, similar to the Board of Selectmen and the school committee is hiring a superintendent?
Yes.
They then would do that. Because these other issues, we really shouldn't be talking about in
Right.
public, because the staff has rights. We should not be
Absolutely.
talking about them in general or in person
Right.
without them being notified, and they have certain rights. So I just
We're
want to
absolutely
caution you
correct.
that
That's what we're
we
talking
don't want to engage in, what kind of discussion, or I certainly don't. The director is entitled to the privacy and the privileges that the law entitles her to. So we should not even be discussing that in an open session. We need to know, or I need to know, what you're asking. So you're asking for hiring authority to be taken from the manager and to
share-
be given to you in total. Then the director would have the authority based on the MBLC rules or recommendations, how to staff the library.
That's
or
correct.
flexibility. If we create this committee through the chair to the town manager, are we committing to bringing forward something to town meeting? Or are we simply creating a subcommittee to look at some issues that someone may have with the charter? Because from what I read here, and again, I'm no lawyer, never spent a day in law school, there's nothing saying that we have to, after step one, go to the other step and bring this to town meeting. So, to me, first of all, we should never be afraid of opening up the charter, because the charter belongs to the people of Auburn, not to me, not to you, not to anybody sitting here, individually. It's a collective document. So we should never be afraid to discuss it, in my opinion. And we also have an elected board asking another elected board to enter into discussion. And I don't ever feel that this board or any board should say, no, we're going to not discuss what you have in mind. But I'm not going to commit to changing the charter at any time. But I'm not necessarily not open to the discussion, but I want to make sure that we're not obligated, and I'm not missing something. That if we open this door, that we're now obligated to do something with town meeting.
I believe you're correct. I believe you could have a discussion like you're having now. And you could have a future discussion, but the discussion doesn't require you to take a vote and support a warrant article. Then if that's the case, it would have to go to town meeting. Then it would have to, you as the board would have to file special legislation. And then it would go through the legislature. As you know, if it's a significant change, which this isn't changing a name, this is very significant, it goes back to the voters at an election. So there's a lot of different steps. You taking the first step to have a conversation doesn't commit you to anything like that.
Mr. Ryder. Thank you, gentlemen, all board members for your comments. That was good stuff. Thank you. You certainly have my support. Board of Library Trustees always has. And I just can't get behind this one. All right. My notes here before this started was why major fundamental change and compelling justification. And I do view this as the bedrock of our town charter. And to give you guys separate rights really sets a precedent and allows the conversation for much larger, substantial change to the town charter that's very relatively new in the grand scheme of things. And I just didn't see any justifications, and Mr. Todd, thank you for answering my questions. I definitely wanted to ask questions and give you a fair shot at this. I just didn't find it compelling enough to go further. I think we've had the conversation. You guys will always have my support, but I just think this is a big ask. And I think that, non-operational policies and advocacy is still a substantial role. Like I think Mr. Berthium said, we certainly gave up, the selectmen as a board gave up a lot of their rights when the town charter was created as well, for professional government, for the best of all our town citizens. So while you do have my support, I'm sorry I can't get behind this one.
Sure.
And if I can just jump in, I wish I had thought to say this earlier. I want to be very clear that I support the library director and the library employees. They do a tremendous job in a difficult situation with fewer resources than they had years ago. It is a very challenging profession to be in, and the profession has changed over the last 3 decades, incredibly. Requirements for libraries are different. There's more technology needs, there's more reporting, there's different software systems, there's different equipment needs. Things have changed dramatically, even in the 10 years I've been here, the library has changed. And I want to say that the library has offered more programs now, far more programs now than they did before the charter changed. And I'm not saying to put it on the charter or not, but the reality is in the last 10 years, the library has offered a lot more programs. In the last 6 years, under this current director, we have an extremely good relationship with the Steelworkers Union, which represents our employees, with the employees who are non-union. There's been a lot of cross-training, and we have employees that are happy to be in the library, and they do a good job by us. And especially during COVID, think of what we had to do for all the departments, but the library was affected probably the most in that they had volumes of people coming in and out, and we had to be very careful with how we treated the employees as well as the public. So I just wanted to make sure I said I support the library director. As far as, to Mary's point, the strategic plan, it's a good strategic plan. I did check it. There is no goal in there for DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. That wasn't a goal, but that was a policy, which is a good policy that the board set, but it's not a goal of the strategic plan. The goals of the strategic plan.
I apologize if I said that.
I just want to be
That's not
clear.
what I-
So the goals of the strategic plan, we are implementing. Strategic plan came out in June of 2020, right in the middle of COVID. And some things, we recognize it. We actually even put something in the preamble to the strategic plan that we were in COVID. And that while we were hoping to start to do this, COVID was going to dictate a lot of what we did. And unfortunately for all of us, we're still in it a year and a half later. So, and I would tell you for operations, just to give you an idea, so we are implementing it. The plan that we have for the library expansion, for the new program, from the outdoor program, all that came from the board's work in the community to solicit input. So when the board says we don't know how the public feels, they do know because they did a survey and talked to a lot of people and had an online survey, and that is your role. And then those things were incorporated into a plan, and now there are strategies in that plan that we as town administration, with the resources, the funding, the budget, and the staff, are implementing as we can. We've chosen which ones we can do by the staffing and by the resources that we have to put at it, and by the other priorities. It's not just the library strategic plan. We have 7 other plans in town, including a master plan, a Drury Square plan. So they've all got to be integrated. So to take the library and put it under a different authority that doesn't integrate all the different resources, all of the different plans, is potentially setting a poor precedent for the other divisions, especially in that department. We have 3 other divisions that all work with the board: the Council on Aging, the local cable committee, and the Veterans Advisory Committee. So I do think that that's potentially setting a example that we don't want to set for the future of the charter, because the charter really is to centralize government. But I had to say, this library is doing a great job. We've got a lot of programs. Is everything always perfect? Is everything always going to satisfy someone? I can't say that. I wish I could, but you can't say it about any operation. You know, we look at everything, even the hours. I know there's been some discussion of the board. The hours are set under the town manager. There's a reason for that. So the reason that the hours are set the way they are, and I know one of the board members had asked me about that as well, we have to look at staffing. We have to look at the number of hours that the employees are able to work under the law without triggering either things under the CBA, under the collective bargaining agreement, or triggering things under Mass General Law for employees. We have to look at how many staff members we have on duty, how do we separate that, how do we cover the required minimum 50 hours a week, and what is the demand. And the library director has provided all of that documentation to me, and I saw that the demand between 7 and 8 at night was 0.6 in the last 17 weeks. 0.6 people went in between 7 and 8. The highest use of the library, right now anyway, in the last 17 weeks, because we have this information, is between 4 and 5, and 5 and 6. And we are open till 7, Monday through Thursday, and then Friday we're only open till 6, and we're open on Saturdays. A lot of libraries that increase their hours also delay their opening during the day. Because again, if you only have a certain amount of staff, you have to be careful that they're not coming in at 7 or 8 in the morning and staying until 9 at night. That you would need a lot more staffing to do that. Our demand from our residents and from our patrons primarily is during the day and the very early hours. And I will also tell you, during COVID, that changed dramatically because people were working from home. They weren't coming out at 7 at night to go to the library. They were working from home during the day, so they were coming during the day. So the hours that we do, we do it thoughtfully. We look at the hours, we determine what staff we have, we determine where the demand is, how to cover that demand, and then we agree that in December, when we can hopefully fill, we have 4 positions vacant out of 11, and we have 1 on FMLA, which could last 12 weeks. So given that, we have to cover the minimum hours of 50, and we will revisit it as we can refill some of those positions. So those are the issues that fall under a town manager, and I believe there's a reason that it has to do that, because we have to look at all the resources we have. We also have to look at sharing resources. Sometimes we've utilized library employees during COVID to help with our senior outreach program. And likewise, we use DPW and facility management to help the library. So there's a coordination of resources amongst all the departments in town. As a matter of fact, there's a meeting next week to coordinate the calendar of events, because we don't want to see the library, again, duplicating potential programs and events that the senior center has or the recreation department has. Is there a way that we can coordinate them so that the residents have a lot of nice options and that we're not duplicating efforts? So that's because all of those divisions are all in the same department, so they can talk to one another. So there are a lot of things that happen behind the scenes that maybe not all the Board of Trustees understand how that happened, but I wanted to mention that. I know one of the issues of late has been the hours of operation, and there are strategic reasons that we choose those hours.
Mr. Toth, did you indicate?
I think probably the greatest example of our impotence as a board is the strategic plan, a plan that we worked on so hard with the expectation that we would be able to ask questions about it, measure it, get some information that we're actually succeeding in doing things. We're not allowed to do that. We aren't, and Julie, you can verify that as soon as we ask that question, it's called operational, and we are not allowed to do that. And so it really is a terribly impotent board, because it's true we can write policies. We have to be very cautious not to get into anything that's operational. We would never expect to do anything with the library director other than what MBLC says, which you hire the library director, you do establish goals, and then you get out of the way. You're not involved in those things, but your goals would allow you to measure outcomes, which we have absolutely no ability to do. And it is a very discouraging role to play. I've been on this board now for a lot of years, and I take it pretty seriously, and I think that we're here to ask for your help. I don't know that it's ever going to happen, but it's clear that the town manager cannot share any authority or responsibility, and so there is no alternative for us. The only thing was left was a charter change. And I guess I'm not privy to understanding how it is that this opens all kinds of other avenues if we're talking about something that's pretty clear and specific related to the library board of trustees. But that's maybe beyond my understanding, how that all of a sudden would create all kinds of other problems. So that's, I don't know what else to say really, but I appreciate that you listened and thank you for that.
And also, I just want to assure the board and the Board of Trustees, they have, in the past anyway, indicated to me what they'd like to see the library director work on, and I incorporate that into her goals, which is my job to do that. We have a performance evaluation system. The library director is subject to it as all other employees are in the town. We set their goals every year, and the goals that I set have been with the input of the Board of Trustees. I've said if you have something you want them to work on, I'm happy to put it in a goal. Right now, we are focusing on specific goals in this strategic plan that we can implement in the current budget and in the current COVID environment. And that's, right now, we're focusing on the addition. And there'll be different years that we focus on different things. Just like the planning board, just like the master plan. It doesn't all get done right away. It sets your path for the future, and you implement what you can when you have the resources to do it. So I just want this board to know that I do that. I do incorporate the goals. And it may not be every goal that the Library Board of Trustees want, because I may have also given goals that tie back into the overall vision for the town that you've all set for me. You give me goals every year. I have to bring the resources together to meet those goals, and I have to put those goals into the employees' goals to work on it. So there are some times that I have to put a goal that you've all established as a goal that may not be the same goal that the Board of Trustees establishes.
Mr. Carpenter.
Last one, because I see I think we've got a good understanding of what you're asking for. I do support continuing the conversation, not necessarily taking the step of creating a subcommittee under this act, but I certainly don't have a problem, subject to the board's vote, with setting up a subcommittee where a subcommittee of the library trustees, we can meet as a group and discuss, ways in which we can support each other, as well as, what it is you're looking for. Ultimately, I don't know that I'm sold on a charter change for this position, just because you are elected, and I have great respect for elections, as I do for anybody who serves in the community. But I do think that the voters I was put out of a job from the new charter. I was an elected planning board member, so I was affected by the charter. I was in office when the charter was taken into effect. So I know how things change, but I also think that we have to change with the times. And Auburn is moving in a positive direction, and we need to find a way to work within the charter to support that. But I'm happy, depending on what the other board members would like, to serve on a subcommittee with representatives and try and see what can be done, But, I'm not prepared to just take the step under the act tonight.
Do other board members have any questions or comments? No. Do you have anything else? Okay.
I just appreciate the time tonight.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So I haven't gotten the chance to say, I'm sorry, Mr. Berthing, did you want to say something before? Yeah, okay. I just want to say that I probably hold a minority opinion with Mr. Carpenter, that, the charter isn't a perfect document, and no document is. I'm certainly sympathetic to any changes. I think moving a lot of our positions off of the ballot certainly had an impact on voter turnout. So I definitely sympathize with you on that, and also with your frustration that changing the charter in one way that you intend is going to open up everything. I mean, we've been having discussions for the last couple of months now on just trying to change our name from Board of Selectmen to Select Board. And that has been my frustration for for months, that we can't just make that simple change without opening up the charter to numerous changes. That said, I agree with Mr. Carpenter. Since it's not committing us one way or the other, I would agree or support, maybe not tonight, because I don't think we have it on our agenda, actually. I don't know how it's worded. So I don't think we could take any action on it tonight. But if members wanted to hold it off to the next meeting and discuss a subcommittee, I'd be supportive of that, since it's not really committal. But I don't know if that's the feeling of the majority of the board right now. But that said, thank you for bringing it up and bringing this before us, and I do appreciate that and everything you do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. I don't think we have anything to vote on this tonight, unless board members want to hold this off for our next meeting to discuss a subcommittee. But what are the board's feelings on that?
I don't see the point to, I don't want to speak for Mr. Carpenter, but if we don't really support it, well, what are we going to keep talking about it for? I don't know what will be fruitful, what will we gain from it? Especially, I think speaking for some of the board members, where nothing that was put before me today is compelling enough to even go down there.
I can only speak for myself. I do think we can take a vote. It is an agenda item. It is something I believe we were expected to discuss. We can act on anything that's on the agenda. I think you gain an understanding of the position of the other side. What is it? And I get that we may be oceans apart, but not talking about it is clearly not solving the problem. We have an elected board that feels unheard in their own building. I mean, that's a problem for going forward. Forget about voter turnout and everything else. You know, ultimately, none of us up here speak for the residents of Auburn in any material way. Because unless we've heard from a substantial group of us, you know, fellow citizens, how can we profess to speak for them? We do the best that we can based on the information we have. But to me, you know, whether we go to the charter, you know, no document, I agree, absolutely, is perfect. And it never will be. Because it's the nature of it. But I do think that it's valuable to have the conversation as elected board members, taking the staff out of the middle of something that frankly is seemingly gotten contentious, which is unfortunate. But we can perhaps, as fellow elected officials, talk to each other without staff, without having to worry about personalities or anything else, and try and come to some sort of resolution. And again, it's not necessarily going to be the resolution that any of us want. You know, I use the library quite regularly. I bump into the director quite regularly, and I agree. I've used their programs. I love what the library's doing. I think they do a lot of innovative and very interesting things. You know, they're doing so many things that I don't know how they actually do it with the small staff that they have. But they seem to get it done, and people seem to really enjoy it. So that's my 2 cents, and I apologize for taking up too much time tonight.
Mr. Berthium.
I totally appreciate what Mr. Carpenter is saying, and I don't think any of this has taken up too much time. And that's what I wanted to have as much of a discussion as we could today, and I actually got a much better understanding. What I feel I'm getting from the understanding is that the board feels somewhat underappreciated. They feel underheard. However, what I'm also hearing is that they seem to be doing what they're supposed to do, and, you know, creating a strategic plan, the town manager is taking the strategic plan and making steps toward that strategic plan. You know, maybe there's some sort of differences in, what's the word for it? People's, personalities, but that's gonna happen anywhere. I don't think that forming a committee and listening to, more, I believe what's gonna happen, and Mr. Carpenter actually kind of cut the chairman short, because we gotta be careful about what we get into, okay? Well, you know, if we form a subcommittee or a form like that, it's gonna be a public session that when we get together, because it's gonna be a meeting. And, you know, so we're constantly gonna have to revert back to, you know, this isn't something that we can talk about. And so, you know, I think the board is doing what they're asked to do. They're very passionate. There's no, obviously, no doubt about that. The town manager is taking that as the hiring body and policy body and trying to put that to use. And I think that, you know, if a board member from the library trustees, just like any other constituent from town, wants to call me and air some feelings, I definitely want to, you know, listen to what they have to say. But I just don't see the purpose of a subcommittee right now for that. And that's why I'll not support a subcommittee tonight.
Mrs. Rufford, and then Mr. Wren.
So I agree with all of the board, actually, that I agree with Mr. Wren that nothing that I heard tonight was really rising to the level of needing to open up the charter to change things. But I'm also not opposed to listening to a subcommittee that might be interested in changing some things. I think the downside of that is that you're gonna have to open it up to all of the changes that people might be interested in and not just the library Board of Trustees. So I think it's opening up to a lot of discussion that may not
consequences.
go anywhere. Yes.
Let me be clear, I'm not talking about creating a subcommittee under the act. I'm just talking about a general subcommittee of the board, not talking about it. And frankly, I mean, we could say anything about any article that goes before town meeting. Town meeting has tremendous power and can do pretty much anything what it wants. I was there the night that they actually threw out the budget. Because it's their budget. They have the authority to say, all of this work, all of this, I don't care a whit about it. This is what I want you to do, and that's what they're elected to do. I don't necessarily endorse that particular action, but, you know, they do have tremendous authority. So anything that goes before town meeting can be amended. There's nothing that this board can do, or any board or staff member can do to prevent that. That's what we elect them to do. They're in charge. We give them that power as a body.
Mr. Wren.
Ms. Shea is the only member left from the trustees. Thank you for staying. Lionel hit the nail on the head, I think, and it's that logistically or procedurally, we oversee the town manager's performance. So we are one body that you could certainly come to if you felt, because I could see where there could be some contention over this non-operational, what is operational, what is non-operational, and where, you know, where's the gray areas in between, and how are you guys effective as a board? Because nobody up here wants to think that you guys feel like you're not in effect, you have no ability to affect the outcomes of the library. So we are somewhere you could come to as well, where we'd happily speak to Julie to see what we can do. But again, I'll go back to it. To change the whole charter, that's too big of an ask.
Is there anything else from board members? Seeing none, I think it's safe to move on to next agenda item. I don't think there was no motion made. So.
I'm happy to make a motion. I don't think it's going to be seconded, but I'll make a motion just for procedural matters. I'll make a motion that the board create a subcommittee and ask the library trustees to send us 2 members, so to be a 4-member committee. We would not discuss anything about personalities, people. We can discuss things in theoretical ways, but we cannot discuss staff or anything else like that. You know, it is simply to get a better understanding and to try and, I don't even want to say mediate, because that's what I want to do, but at least come to an understanding that we can talk to the manager and she in turn can talk to the director and see if there's any middle ground we can find.
Mr. Carpenter, I was just informed by the town manager that most committees, I know we have our subcommittees that are 2 members, would have to be an odd number. So I don't know if you want to amend the motion to be
A 5-member
500.
I'm partial to 5-member committees. I've only served on them. So we'll make it a 5-member committee then, and we'll give the library trustees 3. How about that? That way they can feel they have a supermajority.
Motion's been made. Is there a second? Seeing as there's no second, the motion's failed. All right, moving on. We have in your agenda packets an outdoor entertainment license for Century Sportsman's Club, an outdoor entertainment license for the Haunted Hayride at 531 Rochdale Street, Auburn, Mass. Before we go further with this agenda item, I just want to say that after having received phone calls from members of this organization expressing concerns about myself having a personal bias against the club, I will not be participating in this part of the meeting, and I will hand over the chairman to Vice Chair Wren, who will take over. And while I don't have any bias, I would never say that I have a bias against any organization in Auburn. I don't want there to be any confusion or any thought that there might be, that this board might have a bias for or against any organization. So with that, I will hand things over to you.
Don't crack it.
Sorry. Is the applicant present? Do I need a motion to open the meeting?
It's not a hearing. It's not a hearing. So no, sorry.
Good evening.
Evening. Frank Height, I'm the treasurer of the Century Sportsman's Club. I'm sorry Tristan felt he had to do that.
To keep things impartial
Yeah,
and
no,
objective.
I understand that some things happen, so. As far as this event, you know, Century Sportsman's Club has 42 acres out on Rochdale Street on the Leicester-Oxford line. We've been there for 72 years. For the past 21 years, we've had a hayride in October. It's proposed to run every Friday and Saturday night for the month, so 10 evenings, basically from dusk until bedtime for the kiddies, which is usually around 10:30 at night. Again, it's an event we've held for many, many years, and we've met with DCG. We understand, you know, everything that we need to do, and we're hopeful that the board would approve this event.
Questions from the board members?
Just
Mr. Carpenter?
Just one. You're not having a DJ or music at this, correct?
No.
So it's the same hayride that you've had for 21 years.
Any questions from the public? And Mr. Height, you have no issues abiding by the terms put forth by the DCG in your meeting? Can I get a motion from the board?
I will make a motion that we approve the license, provided that all applicable requirements of the state and town and various departments, boards, and commissions have been fulfilled. Said license is subject to all conditions stated upon it. Failure to comply with any and all conditions shall invalidate the license and render it null and void, and with the conditions of the DCG to be placed as well.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion having been made and seconded, we'll do a roll call vote. Ms. Ruffey?
Yes.
Mr. Berthium?
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
And the vice chair is a yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I guess we'll give it back.
Your head didn't swell at all.
It did a little bit of mine, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, at least you didn't crack the gavel.
I thought that was a little obnoxious. If he's ever not here, then I'll...
The only person who did it that loudly, I swear, Tim Hicks used to hit it, it would almost go, I swear it was gonna go through the thing. I'm like, you don't have to slam it or anything. I should have used names myself, I'm sure. Get elected to college.
Take that back.
Half on that one.
Hey, the money's good.
That is true.
All right.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's right. That's awesome. Yeah, thank you. Okay. So moving on, we have a proposed zoning bylaw amendment for October 26, 2021 special town meeting. Members enclosed in your packets is the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. And Adam, I don't know if you want to come up to talk about this.
Yeah, through the chair, thank you for doing that. This is just a standard, moving the items to the planning board for their required hearings, but Adam kindly sat here for the last hour and a half, just in case the board had any questions specific to it, but there will be a whole public process.
Before we do that, I'll make a motion that we take item whatever F out of order, because we usually do that.
Second. Motion been made and seconded.
8F.
So, I'm sorry, is that to go over the entire warrant or just this?
Just to move the item up, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry, I just want to draw members' attention to the,
Yeah, we're on
We have-
this one right now.
yeah.
This one is not to review individual warrant articles, it's just to send it to town council.
So that wasn't...
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye?
Opposed? It's unanimous. Okay. All right. So, I don't know, Adam, if you want to explain a little bit about this. I know this is just procedural, but if you want to give some background.
So, there's 3 proposed zoning bylaw changes, to be going before town meeting. One is, regarding animals. One is a change to the table and description of uses. And one is, proposed change to the dimensional regulations. There are several reasons these changes are proposed. The animal bylaw, current bylaw is kind of limiting right now. Only 4 animals are allowed of any kind per household in town. This bylaw, proposed bylaw, would allow more animals, allow different kinds of animals, and kind of add some kind of structure as to what can and can't do with those animals. Gives the Department of Inspectional Services and Animal Control some kind of authority, make sure the animals are kept in a safe manner, and tries to ensure that the animals aren't infringing on the neighborhood. So that's kind of the intent of the animals. The dimensional regulations and the table of uses and description of uses. This is kind of an economic development driver, as well as a lot of these recommendations are from master plan surveys, economic development plan surveys. There's been a lot of, at least I've received a lot of feedback about kinds of businesses that want to see in town. One of them is less car dealerships. So the dimensional regulations and the table of uses and descriptions tries to address these by allowing new uses, changing the size, type of buildings that are allowed. So the ask for the board tonight is to transfer it to the planning board to have a public hearing, which is scheduled for September 28th. Also, the zoning bylaw review committee is meeting next Monday to discuss these. We also have a pre-town meeting scheduled. You may recall, we've been doing this the last few years to give the town meeting members an opportunity to have their questions answered ahead of town meeting. We can talk more in depth at the pre-town meeting. Sometimes you should have the one-on-one conversations. So there'll be a long public process over the next month to discuss these. So feel free to attend those meetings. We look forward to input on these changes.
Board members have any questions or comments? Mr. Carpenter?
I haven't had enough time to really go through them, but some of the heights seem aggressive to me, especially where some of our industrials are. That won't affect what's happening tonight, obviously, but don't be surprised if I turn up at the meeting. It's not because I'm hard pressed, but I think 80 to 110 feet in a tiny town, especially where some of these developments go right up against a housing development that's been there for probably longer than the warehouses, I don't think it's appropriate that they should be cast into shadow. And I think we could find some middle ground on the height, that would make it easier for them so that it's not going to cause problems. But like I said, I'm certainly going to send it to the planning board for the next step, and we'll look forward to hearing what they have to say and other committees have to say.
Anything else? I just have a quick question, Adam, and I can also show up at meetings to ask in more in depth. But I noticed for allowable hive density for beehives, the maximum for quarter acre is up to 2 hives. I was just wondering if, for any size plot, if we have any beekeepers that might be affected by this, or will they be grandfathered in?
I don't know offhand of any beekeepers that would be affected. I would assume we grandfather anything that's currently existing in, so where they already are.
Okay, sorry. Great, thank you very much. Is there a motion?
I will make a motion, Mr. Chairman, that we forward these changes to the planning board for the next step.
Second.
A motion been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
So if you wouldn't mind, if you were to take
I'll make a motion to move up 9A.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Motion 9A is Southbridge Street Court. You may remember we discussed this, started a discussion at our last meeting under public comment. Some residents had some concerns, and we invited the DPW director to come in and talk about it. With that, I'll turn it over to
Correct,
the
yeah,
town
so
manager.
if we could bring
I didn't either.
Joanna Paquin, the DPW director, up here, and she can fill you in on conversations that you've had with the residents, but the residents are also here, and I think that they wanted the opportunity to speak also, but maybe you should hear from Joanna first as to what she's
Sure,
looked
we
at.
can hear from Joanna and then have questions from residents after, if that's all right with you.
Close to you, 'cause it's hard to hear.
I was approached by some of the residents, and I know that there were some conversations in the.
Can you pull the microphone? I'm sorry.
Sorry, that's always my problem.
We can hear you, but I don't know if you guys could back there. Unless you're right into the mic, it might not.
My understanding is that the biggest concern is the swale alongside Southbridge Street Court. It's sometimes it might overflow, and it doesn't drain as quickly as we would want to drain. Over the last couple of weeks, I've been out there during the rainstorm or after the rainstorms, looking at the swale, looking at how it drains, and trying to see if there's anything that the town can do. Unfortunately, part of it is that the road is in a low-lying area, so it's going, it's going to have a tendency to flood, and it's also a private street, so that doesn't really, we're only able to allow limited funds for repairs and not really, do a full-out subdivision. So I spoke with a couple of the residents, hearing their concerns. I've also gone out last week to see where that pipe actually discharges. It turns out that the area where that discharges to is already, at a pretty high limit of where the pipe is. So the pipe is partially submerged. And I actually walked with some of our DPW guys as far as basically the diversion channel to see, if there's any hang up, as, like if there's a water level that might be, if there's some sediment or vegetation that's actually preventing water from flowing. And I didn't see anything, so it's basically, again, all these rainstorms, the historic rains that we've had, where the water level is just so high that the water has no place to go. That being said, I've also contacted the Central Mass Mosquito Control Project, and they're in the process of setting up a project to see if they can do something to clean out that ditch and also the area of the outfall, so that even when the water levels go down, it can go down a little bit quicker. So we're trying to do our best to alleviate or at least lessen the problem. But I think with the water levels that we have right now, it just has no place to go.
Board questions? Mr. Carpenter?
Who owns the swale?
The swale, it's within the private portion of the street.
Pipe, if I could just follow up. What is this pipe leading to, and what is its purpose?
The pipe, so there's some water being discharged into the swale, plus whatever overflows over from Route 12. It goes into the swale. There's a head wall, and then it goes into a pipe, and it discharges towards the area where it goes either towards Worcester through our Sword Street culverts, or into the diversion channel, depending on whether or not what the water levels are.
So who owns the pipe?
The majority of the pipe is on the private right-of-way, and then there might be part of the pipe that might be on the water district's property.
How this pipe came to be placed where it is? I mean, is this not within the floodplain?
It's adjacent to
The street itself is within the floodplain, pretty close.
It's pretty close. It might not be exactly within the floodplain, but it is pretty close to it.
Do other members?
I was gonna ask floodplain or flood zone, but it sounds like that was answered.
I do have a question about, so I know in the past, we've had, I think it was Grandview and Fenniff were the most recent private roads that were converted to public roads. Do you know what the process might be to do that? And considering that part of the piping is on the water district's property, I don't know if that would even completely solve the problem, but could you just talk a little bit about what that process might be, to your knowledge?
So typically, we have had private streets be accepted through a process where if a private street went through the subdivision process and it just slipped through the cracks, then we would go through and try to get it approved, as it was intended. So if it was actually constructed to subdivision standards, then we would go through and
Full on 81U, Master General Law 81U, like full on, follow the statute.
right.
Do you have anything to add? With that, I'll open it up to public comment.
I know you talked about the swell.
I'm sorry. Would you mind stating your name and address for the record? I almost forgot myself.
I'm Ed Adamiak. I live on the street, on 11 Southbridge Street Court. My property is across from the swell or the drainage ditch, which never really drains. It's always a couple of feet deep. It wasn't intended to ever be that way because the water comes from the overpass over the railroad tracks, and there actually is a drain there, or a sewer cap, and what happens is there's a tar path that comes down the side from that and goes into that swell. And years ago, the bottom of that swell was also tarred. But I believe about maybe 15 years ago, it somehow overflowed, and according to the neighbor that used to live beside me, who's since sold the property, said that the town came and dredged one end of it, about 50 feet of it, made it deeper, so that it wasn't overpouring anymore, but it also doesn't empty. So what happens is, instead of having something that might have been 18 inches deep with a tar base so that the water would flow, you now have something that's 3 feet deep that's always full of water. And then because our properties are below grade of the road, that water, instead of going down a pipe, which, by the way, that discharge pipe is 200 feet long and it's underground, and it looks like it's made from probably old corrugated tin whenever it was created. Nothing ever comes out of it, and so you wonder about, is it crushed, is it collapsed, is it plugged? You know, I had the DPW come down and they said, well, maybe you should crawl in it, Mr. Damiak, and have a look. I told him, you know, it looks like it's about 18 inches wide and I'm 36 inches wide. It's probably not going to happen. But anyway, beside that, because nothing ever drains out of that, when it's a bad rainstorm, and we've had 5 of them this season where it just overflows the road and goes straight down into the properties. I have like a 4-inch river running down my driveway and around my house. I'm literally on an island. I know 15 years ago that my neighbors, their driveway washed away. So the rain comes down their driveway. They don't park where the driveway used to be. And mine's starting to wash away. So the problem is twofold. You have a ditch that never empties, and the only way that ditch ever goes down or is that it gets absorbed underneath the road and slowly finds its way over into our properties. That's undermining the road. If I could show you pictures of the road actually is always wet, always has potholes full of water. The DPW kindly comes down every once in a while and throws leftover tar in them, but they go away. I mean, I have pictures on the board here. After the rainstorm, one of the really bad ones where we had the river coming down, I have pictures of 24 hours later, 48 hours, 72 hours, and then permanently, the ditch is permanently full of water, and the potholes in the street are always full of water. So that tells me that whatever is in the ditch is just seeping through and then going down into our properties. So anyway.
Mr. Carpenter?
And we've tried to get somebody to
I'm
get
sorry, one
response.
moment.
I'm sorry.
Just recognize Mr. Carpenter, but then we'll come back.
Sure.
Question, and again, not an expert, but remember from the old bylaws, there's some legal standard that we can only spend, the town can only spend X number of dollars on a private road. Now, in that it's so close to the floodplain as it is, from an engineering standpoint, even if they brought it up to subdivision standards, which is not inexpensive, clearly, what engineering is that even going to resolve the problem because they're at kind of the water level as it is?
Honestly, I don't know if there's anything that could be done aside from, raising the road, the grade of the road, and then you're meeting the problem of trying to actually get a driveway up to the road. But looking at the water levels in the ditch and the water levels at the outfall, it's the water level itself that's preventing it from going out. I know that in the future, once we actually clean, we're going to be like I said, we're in the process of working with the Mosquito Control project, and once they help us clear out that swale and help us to see if we can get it to drain, and we actually have an outlet that we can get to, well, we're definitely going to look at the pipe and what its condition is. And I apologize if that was one of our employees. That comment should never have been made.
What comment?
I would
the
never,
DPW guy telling me that? Yeah, that was very interesting.
I would never, I'm not sure who would have said that, but that.
Oh, he did.
I don't know who would have said that, and I apologize for any type of comment that.
But in any event, we hear about it being a private road. We can't wrap our heads around that because underneath that private road is all of the sewer pipes that go to the pumping station, which is beyond the end of our road. So we're trying to wrap our heads around how it's a private road when all of the drainage, the sewage coming from the town is kind of like under that road, but it's a private road. And it also leads to the pumping station, and we see the water department or the DPW going down there, up and down that road all the time to get to that. And there's also an old ball field there, and that's public land. So I don't know how that access road could be a private road. We don't understand that, you know?
Through the chair, just to clarify, there's two different entities, the water district and then the DPW, so
Okay.
the trucks that go to the water district,
Okay.
that's separate from the town.
Okay.
And then, as far as the sewer infrastructure, we have sewer infrastructure all over town that is on private property. So, the town will actually take easements to allow for that. Because, just to be able to install that.
Right, but because the road underneath, the water seeps through underneath that road and is always wet under there, like 2 years ago, one of those sewers pipes was broken because of the frost heaves and the freezing. Because in the middle of the night at 2 o'clock in the morning, the sewage department showed up and they had to literally pump out that drainage ditch and put up all the straw and all of that and fix the pipe, you know, buried the hole and then forgot about it and went away. Nobody still ever fixed the drainage ditch or did anything about it, yeah. That was a couple of years ago. In the middle of the night, it was 2 o'clock in the morning, and there were all these water department trucks there because the pipe under the road the sewage pipe under the road had burst. And now the ditch was full of it. And they pumped it out and cleaned it all up and repaired the pipe, threw some dirt in the hole, you know what I mean, where they repaired the pipe, and then just nobody ever fixes the drainage ditch, which is the basic problem here, you know?
So, like I said, we'll be working with the Central Mass Mosquito Control Project to see if we can at least address the drainage ditch. I wouldn't recommend paving it just because that comes with its own set of problems. Water is going to seep under it, and
Oh, we don't want it paved. I mean, we gotta have the water problem resolved before you can even do any of that. I get that. I understand that totally.
Right, so that's what we're looking at, to actually cleaning it out and seeing what we can do. I don't know the entire history of the ditch, and I can see how somebody thinking that if you dig out the ditch a little bit more, you actually have a little bit more storage capacity, because there's no storage capacity in where it's discharging to, so you might think that might be, somewhat of a solution to actually have more of an area or more volume to store that water until it can actually discharge. But then you're having the issue of standing water. So I'm thankful for the mosquito control project to work with us to alleviate that.
Mr. Brethi?
One of the things that I think I heard from this was that over by the railroad bridge on Route 12, there's a sewer that water goes down and helps to fill that ditch. Route 12 is a state thing, not a town thing, but have we talked to the state to see if, from a state standpoint, they could divert, that particular sewer? And do we know what kind of, if it's where I think it is, if the water didn't go down that sewer and it went down a little further, is there another sewer right by, I'm thinking Town Farm Tire? Town Fair Tire?
Town Fair Tire is at the top of our road.
Top of your road?
Yeah, everything from Town Fair Tire runs down, but the drain I'm talking about is probably across from where Gatsky's is. Like just after you go over the bridge, there's literally a covering, a grate. And under that grate is just a tar pad, and then it's padded through the woods down the hill, and it feeds that swell.
So
It's an additional, the water coming down the street feeds the swell, the water coming from there feeds the swell, and whatever comes down both of those hills off of the bridge feeds the swell, because the swell is actually on On the other side of the street behind Gatsky is the other side of the swell, but it comes under the bridge and comes over to our side. So it's actually tunneled purposefully that way to come over to us. So we get it all. We get it from everywhere.
So just to follow up, so my question was, has the state been involved at all in diverting water from that, from the Route 12 part of it?
Through the chair, I have not been in any conversations with the state regarding the drainage. I can see if I can, find a contact to reach out to them and see what, what can be done and if they could divert it or stabilize it or, what could be done.
I don't think it's a total solution, but it may be a bit of a Band-Aid.
I don't know if it's appreciable enough to be, I don't know, actually, I don't know how much
And to follow up with that, the resident would also, what department of the state would the resident contact to state his concern?
I believe it would be the highway department.
State highway department?
Mhm.
I contacted them a couple of years ago and I never really got a good response from them, but the railroad, they did come out and they looked at it and they decided that they didn't own this well. And because at that time it was all about who owned this well and who was going to fix it. I never really got any answers from the state, but the railroad did come out and actually conduct a survey and said that they didn't think that they owned the land that this well was on, and I should look into the town or I should look at the state. And I thought about that as well because I know it's a state highway, being Route 12, but I never got a response from them. But I made calls, so.
Carpenter?
Well, I think this has got a couple of issues, because now we've got water in a channel, which I think is subject to DEP or the local conservation commission. So you can't just go in and just, do whatever you want to this swale, because it could be protected. But more to the point, I think we need to find out what our legal responsibility is, because if we start assuming this responsibility and through our best efforts, it doesn't get better, which I know that's not the goal that we want, but it just, because where it is, so close to the floodplain, I just, I know I used to hear on the planning board, anything can be engineered with enough money, but I don't think any of us have that kind of money to try and do that. So the chair to the town manager, is there any way that we can get some sort of legal grounding in who does own this? And of course we want to relieve, to the extent possible, what's happening, but we also don't want to assume liability on property that we don't control and open ourselves up to something else. So
I think that we're safe in having the Central Mass Mosquito Control Project help us with this portion, just because they do go through our permitting process, and they're more familiar with what they're allowed to do than we are. And I think that, we could definitely take a look at the pipe, not crawl inside it, but we do have, our equipment to go in there. And we can definitely, we're allowed under the subdivision rules and regulations, I believe, $5 per foot for maintenance. So we can definitely have our DPW crew fill in the potholes so that there's no standing water within the roadway. So I think that those things we can do, but trying to solve the problem of getting it to drain, I just didn't see a very simple solution, just because the water level is just consistent throughout.
Through the chair, would it be a safe assumption to say that trench is part of the water storage, the way it was designed?
I can't say that it was designed that way, but it definitely looks like
Where
it's
the water table is now, that it becomes part of
that way.
Another resident has stepped up. Can you please state your name and address?
Veronica Delorto, 21 Southbridge Street Court. I'm at the dead end. There's been a water problem. I've been there 25 years, and that has been a problem down by that swell. I'm not directly in front of that. The other houses on that street are. Quite a few years ago, we did have a big flood coming down on the side of our home. And I called the town because the water was coming down from the hill behind the diner. And the town said that that wasn't their property. So they suggested I call the railroad. Now, over on that side, the railroad said that that was their property, you know, so many feet beyond the railroad. And they did come down. The pipe that was there was busted and the water was coming down like anything. They did fix that. And actually, it's been quite a few years. I think I'm gonna wait for the next rainstorm, but I think it's starting to build up when it rains real bad and it comes down on the left side of my house. The pipe is underground, I believe, from that swell, and it goes past my house. I think it's broken, clogged. I was told that was put in there like 50 years ago. So, I mean, brush, sticks, trash. We've had a lot of trash come down over that hill from up above. You know, it's probably clogged and, you know, maybe broken after all these years. But it's just a constant, you know, water problem. It's constant for, you know, their homes. I think, you know, it's directly in front, so they really get it. We have water in the back of all of us too. Many years ago, the field wasn't the field. That was like a pond that people skated on. And I was told that when they built Auburn Mall in the 60s, that they took all that fill and they filled that in and they moved the water table. So there's water behind all of our homes too. So we're getting it from the front and we're getting it in the back. So I'm not sure how to fix that. It's a big problem. People want to invest in their homes. All of our cellars are wet.
Well, not mine, but
Well, it cost him a fortune. You know, it's a lot of money, and then you still have, if you spend all that money, you know, to fix your property, but the water is still coming, you know, from all sides, what do you do? And they say this is a private road. I mean, the people who own homes on the road, we're responsible for all of that?
Yeah, so I want to turn to Mr. Carpenter because he had a question first, but I think the town manager can probably speak to, or Mr. Wren, since, you know, he clearly wants to. Yeah, I'll just give it to Mr. Carpenter first.
I mean, if you research the flood of 1955, you will actually, which is before the mall, that entire area was flooded. Where the post office is, you could just see the eaves. So this is not something that happened because of the mall. I just, you know, that is a very wet area. For me, I don't want to take on additional liability because if we do it here, then just like we were talking earlier, that's a precedent. So then if somebody else has a problem and we're trying to fix it, I mean, I'm happy to see the town work to alleviate it, but we have a local bylaw which also would govern this, and it's more restrictive than DEP. So I would just recommend that whatever we do, before you do that, to talk to the Conservation Commission.
Can I ask a question?
Before you do that, I just want to ask the town manager, and my goal is to get a legal understanding of what we can do and what we should be doing, because again, if in the past the town's gone in there, I have no way of knowing that, and added to issues or whatever. From this point forward, the town shouldn't be doing anything that's going to involve legal issues, which may make it worse for you. It may not make it better. So I'm just concerned that we're assuming responsibilities that may fall within other jurisdictions. And we need to be very careful as a community what we do.
Chair, we can reach out to town council to work with DPW director. I think they're pretty clear on what we own and what we don't own. And that goes to what Mr. Wren, I think, was going to speak to, which is the responsibility. But we can verify it with town council, but I think Joanna has a pretty good idea.
I am not town council, I'm here as a selectman. In my work, I am a real estate attorney. On a private road, don't quote me on this, but it's Brennan versus Decosta. And it's an appellate case that stands for the fact that owners along a private street, they own the street, or they own to the center line of the street, and then they have a presumptive easement to pass and repass over it. But the road repair does fall on the owners of a private street.
Okay, if the state built
I
the
understand.
overpass, and I'm thinking they put in that grid and the drain down onto,
It's been so many years, though. I mean, you're almost indicating like a trespass, so to
but the
speak.
town, I mean, the owners of the homes didn't do that. The swell,
Correct, but you purchased the property and you had a chance to do due diligence at that time. After that, it stays with the owner. It's caveat emptor, let the buyer beware. It's a legal doctrine alive and well in Massachusetts. So I no answers that you want to hear, believe me. And again, get a second opinion on the matter. But if the town doesn't own the land, it's not something that they can really do anything about. Title search would be the.
now, do you have that on record, that this is a private road? I mean, is there something that
Examination of the
states?
land, the 50-year title search. of
Because
the
our
land.
homes were built in the late 1800s. So,
You can actually go to the town clerk's office. She
And you
keeps
can
a record of.
find,
She is the custodian of town meeting, and she actually keeps a list of what is public and what is private.
Yeah.
So you can see her downstairs, and she can provide that to you.
okay. Because I don't know if during this 130 years, it changed with other owners. I'm not sure.
Not at this point in time.
Or the railroad.
Nothing that I have available to me right now, I can say that.
I don't know if you could go to the assessor's office. I don't know if you could see if they could locate a plot plan for you. Someone's getting taxed for it. So that's another route that you could go see the assessors on the first floor and see if they have a plot plan, or you can ask, try
Someone's
and get.
paying taxes on the property across the street from us?
Somebody should be, yes.
Okay.
If it's not owned by the town or a nonprofit, someone should be paying taxes to the town.
Okay.
I just want to turn over to the town manager for what you just told me to.
Yeah, I would just say from our assessor's office, they've always said that the maps that they have in the assessor's office are not surveyed maps.
Yeah.
So for that, you have to rely on the registry of deeds. But I believe that you've already done the preliminary research and it is a private road.
Yeah, I based on, we have a list of, from the clerk's office, we have a list of private roads and, publicly accepted roads. So I double checked on that. So it is a private road. I really can't answer to the abutting properties, but that might require a survey or at least a pretty thorough deed research.
town manager, would it make sense for the board to vote to send a letter to District 3 and ask for their assistance to come out and take a look and see what, if anything, in that it is partially being fed? Would they be willing to come out and take a look and meet with the DPW director and at least discuss what potentially could be done? Can we move it that far down the field for the folks here?
Absolutely, we can do that. I mean, if the board, we can do it without a vote of the board, because I know the DPW director has indicated that she'd reach out to Mass Highway. But a vote is fine too?
I would make a motion that we ask the town manager to send a letter to the highway, I forget what their title.
It would be the district director.
District 5 chief.
District office of the Mass Department of Transportation. Highway.
To ask them to come out and assess this with the DPW director and, try and come up with some solution to at least that part of the problem.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Yes, we have that. Does anyone have anything else on this agenda item at this time? Anyone, board members, I should say, first.
Do we need to vote on, Ms. Paquin, you had made some recommendations early on. I can't remember what they are at this point.
So we're in the process of addressing that swale, and then we have on a regular basis filled potholes on private streets just to maintain emergency access. So we can certainly do that as well.
Residents have anything else to add?
Oh, just to say that our goal was to get that swell to actually drain and go somewhere. That's it. That's all we're interested in. Because if it doesn't drain, then it just overflows the road and then we're in trouble,
Thank you. I am really sympathetic to this. I know that with climate change, frankly, I think that this isn't the last conversation we're going to have from, and certainly not just private roads. I think this is going to be an increasing problem in town. But thank you for bringing it, and hopefully we can find some resolution to help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Could you take this one out? It's just, Darlene just wants to mention the back.
Oh, sure.
Just 1
Um,
minute.
This time I'll entertain a motion to move up agenda item 9B, information on VaxBus. Motion been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous.
Thank you. You have a flyer before you this evening from Darlene Coyle, the Director of Public Health and Director of Department of Development and Special Services. It's pretty self-explanatory. If you had a question, Darlene is here. But this is really just about when the VaxBus is coming. We're excited. We're promoting it. And it's obviously part of our community outreach and pushing and making sure that residents have access to vaccinations when they want them.
Hi. Welcome back.
Thank you. So we're really excited. It took us a little bit to get the VaxBus scheduled, but they are coming. To our surprise, they're going to actually stay most of the day. So it's 11 to 5 on Monday, September 20th. It's a week from today. Jean from the library was kind enough to be able to offer her her parking lot. So we're able to set up in the parking lot. It's a kind of a nice visual space right at the intersection. We're advertising it heavily, both in town and regionally, with some of our regional health partners and just trying to get the word out. So we're excited about it. We think it's, another step, another tool that we can use to try to increase awareness. And even if it is kind of fun to see the VaxBus in town, somebody who's on the edge, and if it's convenient, right across from the schools. We've already had an interest of about 30 to 40 people that would possibly come from the schools. So we're trying from all angles. But just appreciate the time to mention it.
Thank you.
Board members have any questions or comments?
Good job. And thanks for waiting.
Yeah, really, thank you for waiting.
Thank you. Have a good night. Stay well. And thanks, I have to take the opportunity to just point out that's another, just example of the cooperation between the departments. That the Board of Health and the DDIS working with the library, just to make sure that we can pull some of these things off, so we appreciate it. Thanks.
I think we moved up agenda item, is it F? Yeah, that we never got to. So is the October 26, 2021 draft special town meeting warrant, and vote to approve the warrant for subject to final review by
Right.
town council.
So through the chair, this is not asking you to take a position on warrant items. Because
We
I
did
think.
vote on this.
Oh, we did?
Yep, this is Adam's item.
Oh, yeah, okay.
We sent it.
Well, Adams was C,
C,
excuse me.
right, the,
C was sending it to the planning
to transmit,
board.
right.
Well, I moved up F, and we did make a motion to send this to planning.
This isn't going to planning,
No,
this is going to town council.
Right.
I guess
You
it's
have-
going by way of the planning.
Yeah, that was only the zoning articles. The motion that was made and seconded was to send the zoning articles to planning. This is asking the board to allow us to send the warrant right now, which is in draft form, to town council to let him start his review. You're taking a position, we wouldn't ask you to do that tonight because you just got it for this one. So generally, we would recommend that you take a position on the articles, probably at the September 27th meeting, 2 weeks from now. And at that point, we can answer any of your questions. We can send it to planning board also if you'd like to.
No, they don't have enough to do over there. I would make a motion to approve the warrant subject to final review by town council.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. All right, moving on to gift acceptances.
Through the chair, I would just mention that this is, if you want mine.
Oh, no,
Okay.
I was looking for the corrected one, so I don't
Yeah,
give.
so the corrected one, so there was a beautiful conference table that came
We all got to use.
to us. Yeah, we all got to use it. It's on the third
Here it
floor.
is.
And it came from Wyman Gordon from Ron Brooks.
Ron Brooks, right.
Through Wyman Gordon had reached out to us to see if we could use it. And I know, so that is the corrected one. I know Lionel and his firm have also donated, but this is a different table. So we're thrilled. We'll take whatever the donations are. We can always use it. But this is from Wyman Gordon and Ron Brooks. And we're thrilled to get it. As you saw, it's a beautiful, beautiful table.
Yeah, I just found the document, I'm sorry, Shannon had given it to me earlier, and I just lost it in my pile of papers here. But, yeah, the donation of a table from Ronald Brooks in the amount of $2,000, not from Mr. Griffin.
I'll make a motion that we accept it and that a letter be drafted to be signed by the chairman to the gifter.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. We also have a $50 donation to the Fire and Rescue Department from Joyce Lamoureux.
Motion to accept with gratitude.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Proclamations and recognitions, we have none. Tabled items, we have the process to change the name of the Board of Selectmen to Select Board. Again, I'll refer board members to the letter from Attorney Hennigan on amending the charter, and I'll also turn it over to the town manager for an update.
Thank you. This board asked me to just go back to town council, double check, look into some other communities to see how they did it. And between town council and myself, we couldn't find any community that amended their charter in any other way but the process that's outlined in your letter. It is a charter amendment. Even if you're just changing the name, you have to amend the charter to change the name. It may not, if you go through the whole process, it may not then require a vote of a ballot question because it could be considered an insignificant change and maybe they would just allow it to go through, although I would say we did find a number of communities that sent the final question to the polls and then it was defeated at the polls. So it's not always a slam dunk and we never know how it's going to work. But one recommendation that we had was rather than going through this entire process, there's no reason the board couldn't take a vote to just use the terminology of select board at any time that you're talking about this, the board, and just not use it for legal purposes. Legal documents, certain legal documents and deeds will have to say for the Board of Selectmen. But if it's not a deed that you're signing, certainly for speaking in public and talking and introducing yourselves, you can take a vote and call yourselves the select board. You just can't officially call yourselves a select board for legal purposes.
Mr. Berthium?
I again, don't feel like we need to take a vote for that. I've actually started making a conscious effort, to call ourselves the select board. I think it's a great name for us. So I think it's just, kind of something that nobody should get called out on if they happen to say Board of Selectmen, but I just think that we can all make a conscious effort to be called Select Board.
Any other comments from board members? Seeing none. I wouldn't be opposed to having a motion to change it on all documents that aren't official, but as you said, we can all just make a point to try to use select board more often. It's disappointing, but ultimately it seems
The times will catch up with the legislature, don't worry. I will make a motion, to your point, that we, on anything but absolutely legal documents that needs to have our technically legal name of selectmen, that we use select board, select, chair, we can vice chair, we don't have to name anything special. But I would make that motion if that gets us further along the road.
Second.
motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Board of Selectmen member items, we have none. We do have the minutes from July 12th, 2021 in your packets. Are there any corrections or omissions? Seeing none, I'll accept them as read. And is there a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Adjourn.